And obviously, yeah, your expectations are it's a slice. You're never going to get more than a slice of Robin Williams. You can never actually come inside the mind and get the whole thing. You're never going to get more than a slice, and it's going to be a great slice, and just fucking be okay with that. Welcome to Dirk Island. My name's Michael Durkheimer.
I'm Alec Durkheimer, and this is the Weekend Show, where we talk about weird and fascinating things going on in the world.
Usually through watching documentaries. So we just watched Robin Williams' Come Inside My Mind. It's on HBO.
I liked it. It's mostly an homage to Robin, but I thought it was a good job. I love him. We were lucky enough to see him live while he was still with us, and I think of him as a comedy legend. It is funny to look over his entire body of work, because some of his stuff is really well written, thought out features, but Mork and Mindy seemed like, similar to, you were talking about Happy Days jumping the shark, the way they present Mork and Mindy as if it was just a platform for his energy to be exuded. It was as if you didn't need to write a plot. And in fact, the entire premise was, how do we get a spaceman in Happy Days? Just throw this funny guy on TV. Yes. And that was the premise, which is so funny to think about an era where ABC needs to, I guess Happy Days was canceled. And they had some contract with Paramount. Yeah. Where they needed to fill that airspace.
They owed them 22 episodes, basically, of whatever they could shove out there, so long as they did it. And they were like, okay, so Happy Days. Once we tried to introduce a spaceman, the other thing was the good part about that story, where the kid is saying, they got the interview from the kid of like the head writer or producer of the show, who says, he was like, why don't you like Happy Days? He's like, Happy Days has no spaceman. I like Star Wars now. And Star Wars was like the biggest show. And so you could just have some crazy man going to the writer's room being like, we need space in Happy Days. That's what the kids like. It's like so insanely ridiculous that was ever a thought that went through anyone's head. And they weren't just like, no, actually, people like chocolate cake. Just keep feeding them chocolate cake. If you want to make a different cake, like make a different cake. But like, keep making your chocolate cake right, and people just always fuck that up.
It really is a funny, like, old Hollywood story. The idea of an executive producer just hearing what his kid wants to see on TV and telling a whole room of professional writers to just get me a spaceman in this show, which is a sitcom, which has absolutely no space for this, and then they create an entire show around this one character that tested well for an episode of Happy Days. Let's just throw that millions of dollars at that. And it does seem like the recipe for the most stupid, obnoxious Hollywood concoction ever. Yeah. But he's just Robin Williams is so good that the show works.
Grabbed lightning in that random assortment of things. They happen to grab a person who's, I mean, that's the truth about Robin Williams, right? We were talking about this. There's a moment where they talk about him in his college years. And he starts out at Claremont Men's College. And then who knows what exactly happened, but they presented almost like he was fucking around and his dad was like, I'm not paying for this shit anymore. So he brought him back to
Marin Community College.
Yeah. They brought him to a community college near where he lived, essentially. And then from there, he's like starts doing acting, and then he gets into Juilliard as a third-year transfer.
Which they kind of gloss over.
Yeah, you're like...
He's like, just gets in.
Yeah, like, that's the best acting school there is. John Houseman, who's the guy from The Paper Chase, is the head instructor there. And he and Christopher Reeves were in the same transferring in class at the same time. And it's like, there's things with him where you're like, how does that happen? I mean, granted, anyone who put Robin Williams in anything is retroactively a genius, but probably more likely lucky. Because it's like, anytime you throw him into Juilliard, that's probably one of the best decisions that school has ever made on a third-year transfer, except maybe the other guy they took that same year, Christopher Reeves, right? I don't know how they select people. I don't know how they selected him, but that is just like so retroactively good. Also, throwing a spaceman onto Happy Days, one of the dumbest possible ideas, seemingly. And then yet you get this classic show that launches a career, Mork and Mindy, out of the most ridiculous premise ever because you happen to find Robin Williams. I never saw any of the Young stuff. I never saw Mork and Mindy. I watched Happy Days when they played on Nick at Night, but when they played on Nick at Night, they never played the last season or the last episodes that were completely off the wall, where a spaceman comes into the storyline. They'd always play the like ones that got the show famous in the first place. So I never saw him on Happy Days, and it's like, I don't know. I never had that. He was the same. It's like the same from a comedy perspective.
Yeah.
From an acting perspective, I remember him completely different. I mean, even like the Genie and Miss Doubtfire have a ton of comedy in them, but him dramatically is as powerful, at least to me, for roles, for sure. I mean, and you don't have as much of that in this doc, but the Miss Doubtfire, even the fact that Genie himself was a prisoner, this whole thing, like the most powerful thing is a prisoner, and all he wants for himself is to be free, and that was like the whole thing, and he's fucking, I don't know. And Robin Williams pulled off everything. It's probably a little bit because he understood the whole range of emotions, but he pulled that off. Definitely Hook had some of that as well, the character in Hook.
Well, there's Dead Poet Society. Which they go over a little bit. That's probably the most.
Yeah, Bicentennial Man. That movie that everyone fucking hates, and I love it because it's...
I haven't seen that since it came out.
Well, it's so funny because he's a robot, and all he wants to... And he's like freakishly smart in some way. It's the stupidest story, but it's... And then every time all he wants is like when tech comes out, he just wants to be able to show one more emotion. So they get him, at first he's just a robot with like a chin blade that goes like this, and then the family, after they like him and he does some great things, he like does woodwork for the daughter and like all this shit, and then they get him a faceplate which has like more moving parts in it, so he can like make a real smile or like do a real emotion, and then eventually he gets like skin, he invents artificial organs, and then he gets some tribunal like 250 years later to declare him a real human. And it's like this. It's a horribly stupid plot, but Robin Williams pulls it off perfectly. It's just, I mean, it was, I don't know. I loved it. I loved so many of the roles he did because he had some sort of a very deep, longing for something, which I don't know, was so believable with him, and probably was because he had a real sense of these things. That was another really interesting moment in the documentary, though, where they played the clip of him talking about acting and saying, everything you think you're supposed to do with acting, everything you're trying to do, once you just stop doing that and just be yourself, then you'll get acting. And I was like, I'm not an actor, but I don't know shit, but that is incredible. Because he was an incredible actor and an incredible comedian. Yeah.
Did you say Good Will Hunting? Did you mention that?
No,
That's one of my favorite dramatic performances by him. Yeah, that and Dead Poet Society. And I guess Bicentennial Man.
Bicentennial Man. Yeah.
No, one of the classic works everyone mentions when going over the history. Yeah. It's unmentioned in this particular documentary.
Yeah. It's like rolled under the bus.
I will say the Popeye, they do go through, because I am of the age where I knew him he was already an established legend by the time I knew of him. And really one of his biggest roles was him playing the genie in Aladdin. So that was an interesting thing. That was the one insight, was seeing him post Popeye and post Mork and Mindy canceling, where there was a moment in his career where it seemed like maybe it was over. But it was the doubting of the talent of his own talent that surprised me, because he committed suicide. You know about that as a context before seeing the movie. And there's a lot of brilliant comedians who do have depression or addiction. That was something that I wasn't as surprised by. But the fact that he was ever at a moment in his career where he thought, oh, maybe I can't have a movie career, maybe this is it, where when you see him perform, and we saw this when he did it live in an interview, he has the ability to just be on his A game in just a flat second.
Yes.
He can go from sitting in an interview to just stand up and go into an open monologue that's filled with improvisation on the spot, and seems to be able to do that at any moment. And so to see how good of a performer he is live, it's that was what was weird, to think that he ever doubted himself as a performer.
Because when we saw him live, I remember at one moment, because it was one of these, it was advertised as Robin Williams in Sit Down or something like that. And it was almost like, you know, you felt you loved Robin Williams, but you could tell, like, especially seeing some of his later stand-up specials, which were so incredibly energetic, like the one he did, the bit he does on golf, and that one, he's basically completely drenched by the end of the stand-up special, and you're like, it's basically taking everything out of him because he's giving it all, like, at this moment. And to see, when we saw him live, it was this sit down. It's like, oh my God, like, I feel bad for the guy, because when he performs so hard. You feel like you've never seen anyone perform that hard. And so he's doing this sit down thing. And I remember there were like these moments in the show where this other guy, David Steinberg, would be telling a story, and he's a professional comedian. He's good. He was, if you were to see him without Robin Williams being on stage, you would be like, this guy is awesome. This is great. And in context, it was like he was the most boring guy ever. And
he was the straight man.
Yeah, it was tough because like he's a funny guy, and I remember him telling stories that were funny, but it would be hard where Robin had such like a power of comedy that one is like hard for anyone to be on stage next to him, and two, like, or it seems that way because he's so much, and two, his power is so strong that when he uses it at all, it's like fucking what's that guy, Cyclops, where he takes off the glasses and the thing's just all over the place, where, you know, it's like so ridiculous he can't control it, and it's on, and like everyone get out of the fucking way, and then he puts the glasses back on, and it's like, oh God, okay, everyone can chill out, because he's like on the stage. But the crazy thing I remember from when we were there is this guy David would tell these, you know, 3 to 5 minute stories, and you felt like it was like, okay, just listen to this guy. You're gonna get Robin Williams for like 50 to 60 minutes out of 90 minutes doing like the manic thing on stage, but like let him take this what's clearly a planned 5-minute break for Robin Williams. He's like had a heart attack, you know, like let him drink while the other guy's telling the story. And I remember one time when the other guy was telling the story, a heckler like said like, yeah, Robin, or like, you know, more Robin or something like that. And they just kind of ignored it, but it was like, oh my God, yeah, he was like the prisoner of his own like magnetism. Like, people were not satisfied with just getting 50 out of 90 minutes of him being crazy, even after everyone knows he's like had a heart attack, and like, you know, it was insane, because you knew the level of whatever, and he was showing it to you, but he'd show it to you for like 5 or 10 minutes straight, and then you'd have like a pause, and it'd be like normal interview or something. And there's only a few people that are really at that level with that kind of comedy. And it's probably Chris Farley and Robin Williams, Jim Carrey, who were so incredible with the physical comedy, with the silliness, where they are so incredible in their like slapsticky, silly comedy that they like jump above all the other comedians who are, you know, actually like, I mean, not to say any of the people I just talked about are not really smart, but people think of them as gods, even though they were doing a type of comedy that a lot of people think is below like the intellectual stand-up, even though they like somehow just jumped right above the whole class, because they can just take down a room in 2 seconds without telling like the most insane jokes. Anyway, I just found it really impressive.
No, it is really impressive, and
it's like seeing something that you can't see. It's like, anyway.
No, I mean, especially if you see someone like that live, you truly understand how impressive it is to bring that type of energy, where normal people would just break down with nerves, period, just trying to get words out. They're able to, as if on cue, unpracticed, do it. But it did seem, I thought it was interesting. They talk about there's a little bit of preparation. It just wasn't like your typical type of going over a script or rehearsing jokes and timing that way. But it seemed like from that guy who drove around with him and wrote jokes for him.
Oh, yeah.
What did he describe it? He said it was like pitch hitting for Barry Bonds.
Pinch hitting for Barry Bonds. You're not really necessary.
Yeah, which was funny because he seemed to live in this place where he wasn't very dependent on material. He was more of a comic actor. But it's funny, you mentioned Chris Farley, Jim Carrey,
Yeah.
And Robin Williams. Jim Carrey, who's alive, has gone through a huge spiritual transition and is a very different type of person. Not to say that it's a negative thing, but it's like he lived at a level of energy that clearly needs to be stepped off of somehow, gradually. Like, you don't just go and then end that job. You need some entire new thing in your life to get you to feel good. It seems like Chris Farley died of drugs. Robin Williams clearly had emotional issues. And Jim Carrey, I don't know if you've watched any videos of him differently, but there's been a huge transition in the type of person he is. And he's like gotten into spirituality. He's a huge painter, but it almost seems like if you're that type of performer, there's a need and there's a relationship with the performing.
Yeah.
Like a kind of monkey dance thing.
Oh, yeah.
Where there's a sadness behind the constant need to perform like that.
Yeah.
And how it starts they do mention early on, it starts at childhood. It starts from trying to make mom laugh or something like that.
Yeah.
Something very primal.
Or dad. Yeah, we didn't.
I will say, for being called Robin Williams, Come Inside My Mind, I don't feel that enlightened on what his internal process was. They kind of, not that it's easy to break down why someone would commit suicide, or even not the suicide, what made him tick as a person. I don't feel like I totally know. I mean, they talk about a dynamic of him needing to perform and maybe an emptiness that he felt off stage. It's mentioned that he seemed like he was very comfortable on stage and maybe something missing when he was off stage. But then again, there was the part when it comes to him actually committing suicide, there was Parkinson's. There's not a lot of dots connected.
He had some
form of dementia. Just certain things that honestly would cause a lot of people to consider the value of their life going forward.
And that seems to be what a lot of people close to him believe was happening, is that his mind was telling him things that were not him. You know, that he was not him at the end, is at least what they seem to believe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that
which makes sense versus
it wasn't just
a thread of I mean, he did have drug addiction. He did have, they say, some lack of comfort off stage, but it's weird because they don't really connect the dots. It seems like it's building toward a narrative of maybe he was empty inside and not happy his whole life, but then when you get to the end of the film and he's passed away, he's committed suicide, I didn't feel like the dots were connected on some lifelong emptiness that led to it. And it seemed like it could have easily been his life was fulfilling with its ups and downs and depressions and drug problems, but largely
and
fulfilling.
Moments of self-doubt,
which
are
totally
extremely common, especially even
not
for people who are
abnormal mental health.
Not abnormal at all, even for people who are as wildly successful. Even though it's surprising to see that, it's completely not surprising if you know of people who are like that, or if you've really thought about this a lot and seen people who are like, yeah, of course, like self-doubt. I mean, we were talking about the Mr. Rogers one the other day, where he's writing notes to himself going, I have writer's block. I've written hundreds of episodes on everything, and it's never gotten easier. What the fuck is wrong with me? You know, and it's an incredible thing with creatives, and it's a problem with all life, even from before. I mean, we've talked about this before, where you get this false impression, especially if you're a very high achieving, I guess, like high school student, where you sit there and you're like, oh my god, I guess I gotta study for like 7 hours every single fucking night of the week plus weekends because I gotta get straight A's, because I gotta fucking go to the best college, and you're sitting there thinking, it's just for them now, it's just for this semester, it's just for this class, just for finals, and then you realize you never get off. If you want to keep excelling at any level, it's this fucking endless slog of there's another thing that you have to sacrifice more than you really feel like, and it's and anyway, so it is interesting that very high achieving people who from the outside you think what could possibly be wrong, why would they have self-doubt? I mean, they exceed at everything they try, and it's like, obviously they do. I mean, or at least most people do. It'd be more uncommon for them not to, no matter how successful they are. But that's just so that part is not so surprising. That's, I would say, in the same as you, in the range of normal behavior.
Yeah.
And it seems like it
even
seems
the
almost
cocaine
more or
we
less-
mentioned
exactly.
was soup. Not that that means that wouldn't lead to serious mental health problems, but you see the train he rides and you're like, how would you not be doing drugs in this world where you're on this astronaut, you're on a rocket ship literally, and then cocaine is everywhere being offered to you
for free.
and
Andy
women
Warhol,
thrown
Andy
at you.
Warhol
Yeah.
and John Belushi want to hang out with you because you're so fucking funny. You know, it's like it just you couldn't.
Yeah, even that
yeah.
to me wasn't. It's not indicative of some sort of he's coping because
No.
he's sad or depressed. It's like you're doing that because you're a normal male who is being invited to hang out with the biggest celebrities everywhere, and everyone's treating you like you're amazing.
Yeah.
Because you are amazing.
Yeah. It's part of the intrigue of the story. The whole premise, the whole tagline that you're talking about, come inside my mind. That's what you're trying to do every time you're watching this thing. But it's not he's not spoon feeding it to you, but it's a lot told in just showing you little bits of him in a way that's kind of opaquely constructed into his life and his psychology at any one point in time.
Well, I mean, but I even remember when he passed away, there was talk of, he did this ABC show with the Crazy Ones, or I don't even know if it was ABC, some broadcast network show that got canceled and was kind of a lackluster way to end his career. And I thought there was going to be, and maybe the media tried to do this, which, seems unfounded.
So I do not hold it against anyone for making bad or different content later in their career. You know what I mean? Like, for example, with Jim Carrey, who we're talking about, and he's making these portraits, and some of them are ridiculous about political figures or whatever. I know there was that one that went viral about
really?
Sarah Sanders. Yeah.
No, I didn't see that.
I mean, I don't judge him. Jim Carrey made so many good movies, that meant so much to me. I mean, Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura. I mean, if you make Dumb and Dumber and Ace Ventura in your life, you're already a legend. You can never be taken away. That can never be taken away from you, unless you were doing crimes at the exact same time, like bad crimes. Like, there's no way that will ever be taken away from you. And so it's basically like, and that's the way I feel about Robin Williams too. No movie or sitcom
he's established.
could ever take away Miss Doubtfire or The Genie or so many other things. I mean, we're talking about things that are, I guess, specifically mean a lot to us because of our era when we really first encountered and like fell into basically love with everything he was capable of. But there are so many more than that. I mean, Good Morning Vietnam is so great also. And there are moments probably for many people when they first were like, oh my God, this guy is incredible. And you can never take that off. You can never.
Yeah.
And a sitcom, there's anyone who I possibly like could probably cash in on a sitcom and I probably would not watch it. I'd be like, you know what? I love you. You did the greatest stand-up special. Now you're going to get checks and make some stupid content. And you know what? Like, do it, I mean, I'm not going to tell you to turn away $10 million when some idiot's going to give it to you. And people are going to watch you too. You made me some great shit and I thank you forever for it, And I don't need to be in the love the thing that makes a gazillion dollars, and that's fine. You can go be a superhero if you get that offer, I might not watch the movie of you being a superhero, Paul Rudd or whatever, like I don't fucking care about Ant-Man, but go take the check,
I've been meaning to see that.
You're like, I want to see Ant-Man.
Yeah.
I watch Thor. I like Thor.
Yeah, I like Thor too.
But I think that's because he's not a comedic actor, and I'm like, that's fucking funny. Chris Hemsworth being Thor, that's hilarious. Yeah. Also, like when I don't know. Anyway, that's a totally different thing.
Different topic.
Okay, so the one thing,
network television or lack of.
I mean, we're talking about documentaries. How many people fucking watch these? Thankfully, more than in the past. It's actually like a really great time. But I love documentaries. I love anyone who makes them, and I love the content. And I love learning through that. And they're all different too. Some are narrative, some are story, some are character focused, and you're learning different things from different people about them. And
And
so anyway, yeah.
This one I thought was good as an homage. I think Robin Williams is a legend in everyone's mind, in our generation's mind, and the ones above us. Mm-hmm. So his life merited one, but that
his
if I were to review it,
5, you could do 5 documentaries on him from different angles.
Books,
you could,
He's
so many different ones. This one was a certain slice, it's like a slice in a layer of like compacted soil. Like this one shows you something about time, but different ones, different things. Like you could have one that's all on him as a stand-up comedian. You could have one on all of him as a dramatic actor, which is like a niche of his genre. You could have one that's all of him in impressions, because the way he does impressions is very different from everyone else. It's like a throw-in of a Marlon Brando, or the fucking prank phone calls to what's his name? Billy Crystal. The prank phone calls to Billy Crystal, where it's like in the movie they just play all these moments where Billy Crystal for some reason has saved the recordings when Robin Williams would call him. But his answering machine would call him. And then so Robin Williams would just make up a random voice and just be like, I'm, someone with a lisp. What were the funny ones?
And Billy Crystal's smart enough to have saved them for decades.
Yes, because that's what you do. Gold. He's just dropping gold on your voicemail. I love that. He just had so much fucking to give, too. He's just like, yeah, I'm calling my friend. That was the best one, too, when he says he answers. And it's Ronald Reagan's funeral.
During Ronald Reagan's funeral, he calls Billy Crystal.
And Billy Crystal is like, oh, hello. He knows it's Robin Williams because it's a 415 area code. And he's like, oh, hello. And he's like, hey.
It's Ronald Reagan.
It's like, oh, that's so cool. What a coincidence. I'm watching a funeral. He's like, yeah.
I'm up in heaven with God. It's hotter than I expected.
Maybe you're not in heaven. You're in the other place.
That's why I'm in a hot tub with Nixon and his balls are on the bridge of my nose. Yeah.
It was just...
Can't do justice to it, but that was
honestly,
awesome.
Yes, really, though. It's just...
I love that he would do that too at the most inappropriate moment during his televised funeral.
It's so good. Oh my god, it's just such. It is a little bit. It makes you feel sad about the fact that he himself is not here in the same way that people feel about Reagan. But it's like he is for a thing. He's a thing that existed on this earth, and we got to like witness it, and some people got to be a real part of it, and. He's not here, but it's like you see, it's like, God, that's like just thankful that you were able to witness Robin Williams in what he was, because he's so unique for the earth. It really. And, it's just like,
I feel so lucky that we saw him in person.
I know. Yeah. It's really.
There was a feeling, because it's like you will be telling the next generation like what he was about. There's a great anecdote in it about his mom putting his mom was really goofy, puts a rubber band in her nose, and at the dinner table would sneeze and like cough up the rubber band. And the dad will just go, "That's really great, Cheryl. That's fantastic." At a genuine, which is so great. It reminds me of the prank called During Reagan's funeral, because it's real comedy where it's actually inappropriate in the moment, and it seems like that was straight from his mom, because she's the type of person who would do that.
Yes, that's so funny. Yeah, he's talking. There's another scene where it's I guess maybe the only time they got on camera, because it's the only one that shows up, but it's him and his mom goofing off together, and his mom does the thing with the rubber band. She's pulling it out on camera, and he's just like can't handle it. His mom's on camera doing this, and then they're like talking about a whoopee cushion. It's like, oh, that, or you put a whoopee cushion under someone's seat or whatever. And he's like, yeah, whoopee cushion. She's like, yeah, whoopee cushion been funny for 50 years. And he's just laughing and loving it. And then she's like, yeah, the secret is you put a little water in it. It's even better. And he's like, what the fuck? You're so fucked up. It's so great. just dying over. Yeah, it's a great thing to see. Just so inappropriate in a great way.
Genuinely, yeah.
And the dad can't.
He's like in front of his dad in an era
so many people would just are probably losing it, loving it so much, and the dad can't handle it. Just
Cheryl.
it's so funny to just be embarrassed by such a thing.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Probably that's why she liked it too. Probably just to fucking rib him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just they probably get some people going in a way.
Yeah.
Part of the fun of being a goof is for people to be uncomfortable by it.
That was a good... I will say now, reflecting on that, there was some good insights about his mom being the goofball and his dad only laughing at Jonathan Winters, and that forming his dynamic for both a propensity for being wacky and a need to be funny as a way to get through to people and connect to his dad.
And he's like, who is this man who can make my tight ass dad fucking laugh? So he's like, I need to be like this. There's this great bit in the documentary where they show Jonathan Winters getting handed a stick and then just riffing off it, you know, doing like this fishing line thing where he goes and then he pretends that he's caught his wife like floating on a pool toy or something like that. And then Robin Williams later going with Elmo with doing all these bits with his stick, like being conductor, just handing over the stick to Elmo, and then Elmo just fucking up the line because he's been so funny that he calls him Mr. Robbins instead of Mr. Williams, and I was like, "Fuck you, Elmo."
You take the stick back.
Yeah,
that seemed to be something he did a lot, which was like drop inappropriate jokes just for the live audience watching.
Yeah, that's great.
It seemed like he did that on Mork and Mindy and for like that Elmo set, which was kind of a funny thing. It's just that it was a treat to see. So I guess there's some insight there. Even though I guess I was hungry for more.
Insatiable. That's part of the problem. I mean, that's like a summary
You're
of
right.
the whole
You
fucking
could do
problem.
5 of these movies to try to dig in.
And it's a summary of the problem of him himself. You're sitting there like, oh my god, just give me more Robin Williams. It's like a drug in and of itself. And you have to be okay with what amount you're able to get at any point in time.
Just a morsel at a time.
You know what?
Just a little bit,
And just be like, oh my god, thankful. Just thankful. Thank you for this little, whatever way you want to put it together. Chef's choice, you know? That's what I felt like about the documentary. Just like fucking chef's choice. Just give it to me.
Show me whatever you want.
Like honestly, I know this is a 5-star, like whatever, like just fucking, just however you want to put it together, I know I'm going to like it. Onto it all. There was another moment that was kind of interesting where he was talking, it was the writer guy who said he was like the pinch hitter for Barry Bonds, the writer guy, where he said that for a point in time, shortly after Robin Williams got to know him, that Robin Williams started introducing him as his best friend. And how he was like, it was a very weird insight into Robin Williams, because Robin Williams was almost a star shooting so fast that it was difficult. It almost seemed like maybe he wasn't having enough time with any individual to develop what many people think of as best friend relationships. I mean, even you think about his college career, where he's 1 year at one school, 1 year at another school, another year at Juilliard. I mean, it's an incredible trajectory, and along that trajectory, how much time do you actually have to make the long-term relationships that most people consider, you know, needing for like a best friend scenario? It's very anyway. So that was another interesting insight into the thing where he was, where he possibly was. He was shooting so fast. He was becoming famous so fast. His life was changing so fast that it was possibly difficult for him to get those people. But it seems like he had really strong relationships with a few people throughout his life, at least who they feature. That writer guy, Billy Crystal, and also this Bobcat who did the movie with him.
Give me Billy Crystal as best friend.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm good.
Exactly.
I'm good. And Bobcat Goldthwait, and like a family. 3 kids and a family. I mean, you don't really need more than that to be happy.
True.
It's not. It's interesting because you're right. There's that,
especially the story that Bobcat tells, or that the son tells about him and Bobcat after Robin Williams had died. You know, the one where they spread the ashes into the San Francisco, into kind of the ocean near where the Golden Gate Bridge is. And that one day they were just feeling upset about him dying, essentially, with his son, and they're like, let's just go swim in that part of the water. And that, I mean, that's great. The other thing is, can you imagine, I mean, as far as what you could ever want from a best friend, to take your child to do that, it's like, that's a great character moment. I mean, and there were a lot of those in this film too. Do you have anything else to say about this one?
No, I mean, I feel myself kind of going back and forth about, I initially felt and was saying, I don't think it was wrapped up with his suicide and the sadness, but then you do point out the best friend comment with the guy who wrote jokes for him, saying he introduced him as a best friend after knowing him for a couple months. And there are some moments, but I can't really parse out, especially the way they cut together the documentary, if we're just looking for moments of sadness, for threads of sadness in his life, which normal, healthy people have, or if there's genuinely a thread, because as we get to the end and the eventual suicide, it just doesn't feel connected to ongoing sadness, even though I myself found it. And one thing they didn't round out was that Christopher Reeve was the godfather to his children, who he went to Juilliard with, which is another, could have been a best friend, godfather to his kids. And then there's this one anecdote about him introducing another guy as his best friend who he hardly knows. But it's kind of like, are we looking for sadness because he committed suicide, or was it actually there? Because by the time you finish the documentary, it's not how I felt about him.
No, I think that
it's not the energy he exuded either.
Exactly. I think that the end of his life, and you expect the end of his life to connect to everything, as you were saying. But I think that he was really magical as an actor and as a person. If you really love him, you love both the comedy and the drama and the whole range, that he was able to connect with people. I mean, Dead Poets Society is a movie about a kid who commits suicide. It is a very dramatic film in actually seeing it, and it is one of the best movies to watch of him. I mean, Good Morning Vietnam has the total range of emotion too. Every one of his great movies has the total range of emotion, from extremely funny to extremely dramatic. And that is what is to appreciate about him. And he was a master in that way. And I don't think that you might want to take what the end of his real life to be like that streamlined through, that was like what we're really seeing. But in fact, it seems like he was just a master who had an end. And it was an end that was partially caused by disease. Possibly there was a sadness, but it doesn't seem like it was out of the normal range for someone who's so capable of all of those emotions to feel and be real. And then, yes, he committed suicide, but it does seem like it was almost unconnected. It was a late deterioration thing, as opposed to some sort of through line where we have to sit back and rewatch everything and go, oh, that sadness is because he was near the end at all times. I don't think that's really the proper way to, or at least it doesn't seem like the proper way to see him. It seems like the proper way to see him is he really understood sadness, but in a way that anyone can contemplate. And we don't have to sit there and feel sorry for him. We can sit there and just be in awe of how in touch he was.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's a tribute to the documentary. I mean, it does cover the suicide. It doesn't ignore it. But just like his life, you're not connecting it. I don't think his suicide, which I thought it was going to try to do, connects to the rest of his life. I think it's a natural inclination in the human mind and in a documentary to try to piece together what does the death, and especially a suicide, all mean for the rest of his life and how he lived. And I felt by watching this, there was a genuine disconnect, that we're searching for meaning in his suicide that I don't think was fully represented in his life.
And we have to be okay with not getting everything answered or tied, because he's too much. I mean, he's too complex to really, you just gotta enjoy it.
Yeah. And I did. I thought it was great. I would recommend it for anyone who loves... that's what I would say. If you love Robin Williams, it's totally a good watch and good reminiscence of everything great about him.
Yeah, and obviously, your expectations are it's a slice. You're never going to get more than a slice of Robin Williams. You can never actually come inside the mind and get the whole thing, or whatever you would potentially, by reading the title, think Robin Williams Come Inside My Mind means something, but you're never going to get more than a slice, and it's going to be a great slice, and just fucking be okay with that, because that is the most important thing, especially with him.
Totally. Well said.
Hi everyone. If you want to keep up with us, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on YouTube for the video episodes.